Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. I thought J.P. Boutros was really quite interesting in his conversation about Doug Ford, Premier Doug Ford, and his calamity over the course of the last 3 weeks in regards to the Greenbelt. JP and I did have a conversation a couple of weeks ago where, we had a different, he at least had a different strategy for what he thought Doug Ford should do. And 3 weeks, as he said, is a long time in politics. And he ended up, Doug Ford, the premier, had to apologize for what he had done in regards to the Greenbelt, and take a huge step back. And I think there's a bunch of lessons there. And so I wanted to close today with a couple of my own personal thoughts on this topic, both in regards to leadership, to politics, and to the housing situation, and the Greenbelt. I think that in life, in politics, when you make a mistake and you know it, getting over it, ripping the Band-Aid off, the old analogy, quickly, healing, and apologizing quickly is almost always, if not always, the best strategy. And I think that Doug Ford, did the death by 1,000 cuts or whatever, the right lingo is. He waited too long, and he should have known more quickly that the process was flawed. He had an ethics commissioner tell him that. He had the auditor general tell him that, and he should have realized that, and he should have backtracked on his releasing land from the Greenbelt policy, and should have stopped the process. Or he should have stopped the process and then said, we'll restart the investigation, rather than keeping the situation as it was and reinvestigating whether the property should be removed. And as soon as he found it was only 2 developers, and it was developers that were connected somewhat to him and to the Conservative Party, and had attended different events with him and or his cabinet ministers, it just smelt wrong, and he should have stopped it. And he's a smart enough man to know that. So I think that, frankly, he would have been less damaged if he had listened to the Auditor General and made the decision he made last week, 2 weeks ago. Or, frankly, never made the decision after he pledged to never allow properties out of the Greenbelt. So I think that's one answer, is that rip the Band-Aid off approach is the right approach. Or as crisis management people will tell you, is that when you need to, apologize as quickly as possible. And I think that's a good rule in lots of life. I think the other issue that comes out of this, though, is the housing strategy, and what Doug Ford and the Conservative government and the prior housing minister, Steve Clark, were trying to do. Which I actually think is right. And I've argued that a lot. I think that we've got maybe 3 issues in regards to housing, and probably lots more, but 3 major issues. Number one is interest rates, and they don't have any control over that. And so until such time as interest rates come down, I think there is going to be a lag in new construction taking place, because it's very difficult as a developer to buy off on a variable interest rate that's high during the construction period, and not knowing what you're going to be able to take out your financing at. And so I think that for a while, until things settle down, may not have to come down, but may have to stabilize. I think that is an issue, and you can't, as premier, do anything about that. So let's take that out of the equation. The second is, I think, lack of supply. We are building something like half of what we need on a per capita basis, or at least half of what we were developing a generation ago on a per capita basis in Canada, and for sure in the Greater Toronto Area. That's not sustainable. It has to change. We have to attack the housing supply issue like we attacked COVID, like we've attacked other major issues that our society has confronted. And the problem lies, if not 100%, close to 100%, at over-government regulation and red tape in local municipalities, where it takes too long to get projects approved, the taxes are too high, the government red tape regulation and interference as what you're trying to do is too great, and it promotes a an environment where anyone that complains, we called it NIMBYism, but anyone complains about anything, you get to stall the process and hold it up. And in no other area of business do I think that neighbors could have such an impact on private ownership. And I think that it's wrong. I think that zoning was put in place a generation ago or 2 generations ago to keep factories that belched a lot of bad stuff away from residential homes. And I think that our zoning regulations and our planning departments have morphed into this red tape morass today that has clearly created a situation where we are building half as many homes as we need, and maybe more. And so general levels of supply have to increase. And the only solution to that is less regulation, less red tape, more speedy approvals, and less taxes, development fees on those homes. And I taking the GST off of rental, purpose-built rental, I think is a good first step. I take it off of all housing right now. And frankly, I take the HST, so both provincial and federal taxes off of all housing, maybe just for a while until we get our housing situation fixed up. Because I think that, if you say it's forever, you don't speed up construction. But if you told the development industry, it's off for 5 years, people would start building real quick. And so I think that that's something we got to do. I think that the major transit area zones is a great policy. As I've said before, I think that, increasing density dramatically, increasing height, maybe taking off height restrictions, if not completely, almost close to completely, maybe right at the intersections, not the whole transit zones, maybe increasing the transit zones that they're talking about from 800 meters to 1 kilometer, making them a little bit larger, all makes a lot of sense. Why? Because that's the best place to have density. Helps the economics of our transit. It's where people don't need a car because they can make use of transit. And it means that we get to increase our housing supply without having to have 6 or 8 or 12-story buildings everywhere across Toronto, just having it at major transit zones. And I also think that there's a political issue here, which is, that what people talk about, change the channel. I think that Doug Ford, Premier Ford, and the provincial Conservatives do have an issue where too much of the focus has been on the Greenbelt. And it will continue, even though they've made the apology, unless there's something new to talk about. And I think that something new to talk about should be an announcement this week on major new density and height around major transit zones. And I want to come back to this issue of height. And I've said this before. I think Hazel McCallion, the former mayor of Mississauga, made a really brilliant move when she took off height restrictions around Square One because she wanted to create a downtown. And effectively, she let the market decide what the appropriate height was. People that talk about, if you took height limits off, everyone's going to have a 100-story building. Well, that's not true, because there's not enough demand for 100-story buildings, and there's not enough people that want to live, and there's not enough profit in it. And so I think the market will decide, and different developers will compete, such that maybe there's an 80-story or 100-story building at Bloor and Yonge, but a block away, 2 blocks away, there won't be, and there probably won't ever be at Yonge and Eglinton or Yonge and Shepherd. And so I think the market will decide over time what the right height is. And we don't need to have smart people in planning departments tell us what's the right height. And so I think that this major transit area zone should be a critical strategy that the government should go to right away. And then the final thing that I wanted to talk about is these development fees. They're a tax, $140,000, some people think on average, but they vary dramatically by different municipality. It's the wrong tax. It's a regressive tax because it taxes the poor. It taxes renters that want to become homeowners. It taxes young people that want to be buying homes. It taxes newcomers to our society. It is wrong. We need to take it off and or reduce it dramatically. But it will create a hole in city finances. And so therefore the provincial government needs to allow something to replace it, either a sales tax and or increases in property taxes that are ruled in by the provincial government so that they're comparable everywhere. So there's not an issue city to city, or transfers from the provincial government. There's got to be a solution, but it shouldn't be this regressive tax in development fees that are a way of taxing the most vulnerable in our community and damaging the potential solutions to this crisis we've got in housing affordability. Anyway, that's my few comments. If you got a problem, if you got to apologize, if you made a mistake, rip the Band-Aid off quickly and make the apology. Number two, if you've got the right strategy and you made a mistake by talking about the Greenbelt, or by releasing lands from the Greenbelt, means that one thing in that strategy is wrong, doesn't mean the strategy of increasing housing supply was wrong. And so just double down on that strategy. Make sure you don't make the first mistake again on releasing lands from the Greenbelt, but housing supply to ensure housing affordability. Was this right strategy and should be the right strategy, and therefore come out with something like major transit zones to reaffirm that it's the right strategy. And number three, development fees. Got to be reduced or eliminated. And you got to solve that fiscal hole. That's my show for tonight. Thanks for joining me. I remind you, I'm on every Monday through Friday at 6 o'clock on 960 AM. You can stream me online at www.saga960am.ca. All my podcasts and videocasts are available on my website, briancrombie.com. Good night.